Welcome, ladies and gents. This is Emmet, the host of the Resolving Reality podcast and the author of the book Red Pandemic, the Global Marxist Cult. Back with another series of live streams, interviews, some other bits and pieces as well. So if you wouldn't mind, please do like, follow, subscribe, share this content, and drop your comments down below as well. Your support is greatly appreciated. So in today's live stream, I'm honored to be joined by a very popular and successful Chinese-American author who, believe it or not, survived Mao Zedong's regime in communist China, came to the States a few decades ago, and she's been very bravely speaking out about communism and its potential effect on the United States. She released a book in 2023 called Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning, and at the start of this year she released her new book, Made in America, The Hidden History of How the US Enabled Communist China and Created Our Greatest Threat. So fascinating title, fascinating book, very impressed with it so far. So without further ado, I'll bring on my guest, Xi Van Fleet. Xi, good morning, and how are you doing?
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Great to speak to you. It's a real honor. I think I became aware of you about, a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I was on an American Space, I'm pretty sure it was, and we kind of followed each other. Yes. I've been aware of you since then, following your work. Congratulations on your success. The recent book is absolutely fantastic. Very impressed with it. I love talking to specialists. I like learning more about what I do. It kind of empowers me quite a bit more. And before we get into any other details, let me know, how's it going so far and what's the reception been like for the new book?
It's been going really well. I have been busy going to different platforms and promote this book. And this book is a little bit different than the last. It's a lot of history. Actually, it's more than a century of history. And so it will take some patience for people to learn about all the facts. But once you see it, you will never unsee it. Because the same tactic that the CCP has been using from 100 years ago and still working today, and that works in the United States and in the West. And so it is important that people understand it, and then people can see through it and see now we're in such a dire situation. And communism is no longer over there during the Cold War, right? We can see that it's over there in the Soviet Union and it's over there in China. Now it's everywhere. It's inside our society. And Ireland is no exception.
Yeah, well spotted. Yeah, as we both know, exactly what you said. Once people get into this game, you go, oh my God, this is everywhere. And people can't see it. It's really quite extraordinary. And I mean, it's amazing that you opened my eyes to how far back this goes. I was in the States. I mean, I was aware of, say, the socialist movements in the late 1800s, the labor union movements. We'd see the beginnings of Marxist or socialist thinking. And then you had in the 1920s, of course, the Soviets were in America with the Comintern, creating all this trouble in the background. But the history of Chinese influence goes back really far too, as the book outlines. I don't want to ruin it for the readers, but how has the response been when you try to say to people, listen, communism is not just in the past, it's here, and China it presents a clear and present danger to the United States?
I have to say, this is amazing. When I started to speak out in 2021, I started to use the word communism. And a lot of people advised me, including my husband, said, just don't use that word. People will think you're crazy. People will think about 50s and the Cold War. I said, but it is communism. And now listen to people. This is a word that everybody is using today. And in 2024's election, Trump calls out Kamala as a comrade Kamala and call their agenda communist. So I think people finally start to see this is communism. There's no better word for it.
Exactly right. Yeah, spot on. And I mean, you have to just keep hammering this home to people. I find it amazing. It's like half the planet is literally asleep. And in my opinion, this ideology is destroying everything. Obviously the Chinese... Everything. Yeah, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, of course, for the viewers who don't know, I mean, it is a dictatorial totalitarian system, and it's just one part of the communist movement, but in my opinion, it's the most dangerous one. What do you say when you talk to people? I deal with this all the time, Xi. You know, people look at me like I'm from space when I start talking about communism. They look at me like I'm from another planet. And what do you say to people when they say, oh, but China used to be communist, it's not communist anymore, that was a different era, what are you talking about? They can't be so dangerous nowadays. What's your usual response?
Yeah, this is something I addressed in the book because this is a very important question. And
Yes.
I was in the conservative. I was in a conservative event not too long ago, and one of the people in the audience said, "I'm so glad you talk about this because just today I was talking to a liberal friend." And she said, well, China is no longer a communist country. It's a capitalist country. And I don't have an answer for it. And that's important that people understand that China has always been a communist country. It's not that what they say, it's in their constitution. And they don't hide it. They absolutely don't hide it. It's right there in the open. And if you go to Tiananmen Square, that is the heart of the power structure in China. You still see Mao Zedong's portrait there, who had killed more than 80 million Chinese. It's still there. Nothing has changed. It
Yeah.
is a communist country. What happened is the people here, especially the liberals, they refuse to see it. They want to be deceived. And that is the story of this book. So many people, it's not, you can't say, oh, the CCP are so cunning. They really deceived so many generations of American political leaders. But it's not that simple. Those political leaders, they wanted to be deceived. They wanted to see what's not there or what's there. They deceived by their own worldview, which is no longer biblical, which has been liberal and then Marxist.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I know things are not black and white. We're dealing with ideology, we're dealing with brainwashing. And I don't know how many people in
Yes.
America are contaminated with this thinking. And I know that America has the two-party system with the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. I know that not all Republicans or people who call themselves Republican are, you know, fully awakened to communism and they're full-blown patriots. Likewise, I don't think everyone on the Democratic side is 100% full-blown Marxist revolutionary. But I'm sure, is it kind of like that? Generally, the reaction are people in the Democratic camp looking at you like you're crazy, trying to dismiss your work and so on.
Well, actually, I have no access to the people on the left. No one would invite me to talk, and the only opportunity I have is on Twitter or X, and that I deal with them daily on a daily basis. So I'm really grateful because I want to talk to them. I want to know what's in their head. But so far, I have been talking to conservative groups, and even there, I would say many of them have no idea. They have no idea that the nature of our fight has changed. It's no longer Democrat versus Republican. Okay, the Democrats kind of go crazy. No, it's no longer that. It is really a matter of a fight between good and evil, and communism and freedom. And then a lot of the students understand it, and that's our challenge.
Yeah, and I suppose exactly, you said it there, it's the fight between good and evil. And I think politics is definitely a part of this, but people have to start looking at this from a point of view of, you know, consciousness awakening or indoctrination. It's as much a psychological and sociological issue as it is political, in my view. And I think that people have to, you know, elevate their understanding, and that's where your work comes in, my work comes in. People like James Lindsay, Jeff Nyquist, Trevor Loudon, there's loads of people chipping away at this from different angles, and they really need to put more effort into studying this stuff. Are people shocked as well when you talk about this being potentially as well a kind of mortal danger for the United States? I mean, the Chinese Communist Party, like all communist groups, tend to be anti-Western, and America has been the big baddie for over 100 years. Are people shocked when you present them with the idea that America is an actual physical danger as well?
I think a lot of people told me that my first book was an eye opener to them. A
Yes.
lot of them knew just by instinct. You knew something's wrong. You knew that, the riot on the streets and all this chaos, but they have no idea that this is a repeat of history. People like me, I'm still here. I'm not that old yet. And I personally experienced another cultural revolution only 50 years ago, and more than 50 years ago. So it is something that people now see. Oh my God, there's true that nothing new under the sun. And with that, I think they have a much deeper understanding that what's going on today is something that has been happening in history. And then we know what happened in the end of the Chinese the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And
Yes.
we know the same thing will happen to us. So I think that's what I think that my contribution is, that I lived through it. It's not that I read some books and did some research. I lived through it. I'm telling you, it's the same thing. And I'm telling you, we will have the same result if we don't stop it, which is the destruction of a civilization and the destruction of a nation.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and I believe it is the big issue in the world right now. The people aren't talking about this, engaging with it. As far as I'm concerned, they're not in the game. And as you talk about in the book, globalism is communism. It's about global control. A lot of people haven't caught onto this, which is quite extraordinary. You think of the tens of millions of people across Western countries who are complaining about the effects of globalism and so on. They don't quite understand the ideology behind it. And say with the Chinese American community in the States, I know that the CCP can scare a lot of people. Their influence spreads across the world. What's the reaction been of Chinese Americans in the States? Are they inclined to support you either openly or kind of privately?
And it's the same thing, actually. It's very interesting. After I spoke out in 2021, many of my friends just pretty much just distanced themselves from me because we have different political views. So a lot of my leftist friends no longer talk to me. So so then during the process, I made a lot of friends with Chinese patriots. They are Chinese American patriots.
Great.
So I think this is something that I did talk in this book, the second book, a lot about the Chinese Americans, their experience. And a lot of people, American, thought that, once you live through communism, you will never again support communism. It's not true. Not true at all. And the people like me who lived through the Cultural Revolution, suffered. A lot of them lost family members, and then they come to America. And then they somehow just could not see that the leftist and it's the same thing as communism. And because they kind of readily bought this idea that now in America, they are victims. They're victims of what's called white supremacy. And they absolutely seek the protection of a new savior, the Communist Democratic Party. And they fell into the same trap twice. And I said, if you fool me once, it's my fault. If you fool me twice, it's no.
Shame on me. Yeah, I got it.
If you fool me once, it's your fault. If you fool me twice, it's my fault. Many people are still being fooled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chinese, I mean American Chinese. It's very sad.
Yeah, and I mean, we're looking at looking at the concept you're presenting people with the new book is that America's kind of under attack. When I look at even just the history, America was, I know this goes back over 100 years. America's capitalist. It's arguably America's a big capitalistic success story. The greatest country in the world. Okay, it's got issues like any other nation, but it's done really well for itself. And that's one of the reasons why communists want to attack it. Another reason is America, particularly since World War II, was the major opponent to the spread of communism, the Korean War, the Indochina Wars, including the Vietnam War, the Cold War in general. So is that perhaps why the CCP wants to attack America, or are there other reasons?
Yeah, it's you laid it out pretty clearly. And in its inception, the Chinese Communist Party regarded they know exactly what who were their top three or the trio, the enemy of three entities, and that is Christianity, capitalism, and United States.
Yes.
And why United States? Because it embodied both. And that is very clear from the very beginning. And as I described in my book, after the founding of the Chinese Communist Party in 1921, at that time they only have 52 members. All of them were professors and their students. So it's the radical intellectuals, just like today, the so-called 白左, white liberals. Okay, so they started to take action because they founded the party. And what was their first campaign? The first campaign was an anti-Christian campaign, because back then in the early 1900s, there's a lot of missionaries from the West as well as from the United States, and so they absolutely consider that the biggest threat to their newly founded party, and that is has never stopped. That has never stopped. But it is interesting to know they pick church as their first target for their communist revolution.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I don't want to knock you off track here, and we could focus on China and the United States. But as I kind of go into in my work, in many ways, communism likes to attack Christianity because it's, for many reasons, including that it's Marxism is essentially Satanism repackaged. It kind of destroys everything, including creation itself.
Yes.
It's also a competing ideology, I guess. Christianity has certain strong belief systems in it, moral standards. We should cherish life, cherish the human experience, and communism does anything but that. But maybe as well, by people, I was thinking why Americans would struggle to think the Chinese regime is so dangerous, or is because they're not seeing an army coming over the hill. They don't think of it in terms of the communism of the past, like the Vietnam War, or the Cuban Missile Crisis, or anything that involved war or potential war. But I mean, China, the CCP regime is very sneaky in how it does its thing. It seems to be using political influence, economic appropriation, buying up territory, and so on, and getting its tentacles into things. Would you say that's a fair assessment of the kind of tactics that it uses?
No, that I think that is the kind of a narrative that most people accept in the West and in the United States, that China was, it's kind of a dangerous, but we never had a confrontation with them, which is so wrong, which is absolutely false, and which I explained in my book. And think about this, for the entire Cold War, and the Soviet Union was considered our greatest threat to
Yes.
both Europe and to America. But we never had a confrontation with them. We never had a war with them, which is not true with the CCP. We fought the CCP in Korean War. 60,000 American soldiers died, although more than 300,000 Chinese soldiers died. But who cares? They basically used to secure power for Mao and for the Kim family. And
Yes.
then fast forward, during the Vietnam War, the Chinese government sent out 300,000 troops during the duration of the war, and they were absolutely in the war, fighting against the Americans and killing Americans. And fast forward, and then we see that how many people died with fentanyl overdose. That came from China, hundreds of thousands. And fast forward just a few years ago, the CCP brought to the entire world CCP virus. We should not
Yes.
even call it COVID. It's CCP virus. Killed millions of people worldwide.
Yes.
So CCP is not so-called peaceful. They were just using their political powers and to show their strength. No, they have been actively killing Americans and killing people around the world. They are absolutely a deadly threat to the entire world.
Yeah, and that, as you said, you joined the dots there. It's when people don't know the history of some of the stuff that's happened, like the conflicts in the past, they don't think that America has fought the CCP before, which they actually have, as you outlined. And then recent things, everybody knows about COVID and what happened, but people were going on about the Illuminati or the global elites, and it was all, ooh, conspiracy stuff. And I was like, well, COVID came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Nothing happens in China without the say-so of the CCP. So, I mean, it's just people not joining the dots. They don't understand the danger of what they're dealing with here.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think we should call it the CCP virus. And Trump called the China virus, upset a lot of people. I would say, let's call it the CCP virus. And let's continue to do it to remind the people that it was the CCP released. I don't know, it's accidental or not, but they released that virus. And I myself suffer from it. I was in ICU for 10 days after I
Wow.
caught the COVID or the CCP virus.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I often try to bring that up to Irish patriots or British patriots or anyone else to show them what they're dealing with and how powerful this communist movement is and what it will do to Western nations if given the chance. Very vicious ideology. And one of the crazy ideas I've encountered with is I think a lot of this comes from Soviet era propaganda, and Ireland is certainly contaminated with this thinking. Don't get me started for over 100 years with communist brainwashing, but there are some people who think, America has nothing to do with us. China's nothing to do with us. We're a neutral country. We don't care about any of this stuff. And they don't seem to care about the idea of China potentially becoming the world's dominant force over the United States. They don't really have a preference. They see them both as equal, and America's equally dangerous. How would you respond to that?
I think this is really the time that it should be very clear to everyone, every country in the world. It is, you are either with us or you are with the CCP. And so
Yes.
there's no such a thing as neutral country. Oh, I'm out of this. Is a fight between the United States and China. Now we are neutral. There's no such a thing as neutral, because what the CCP wanted to do is to not just surpass United States, but replace it as the number one superpower. And then they're going to have a new world order, and that the CCP are going to set the rules. And if you see what they treat the people inside China, you can just pretty much get the idea how they're going to treat the people that they conquer. And so it is
Yes.
absolutely, yeah, it is a battle of biblical scale. It is between good and evil. And everyone should choose the side and choose the correct side, the side of the good.
Yes, 100%. And I think that's crazy for people in Western countries. As you said there, I don't think they understand what's going to happen if China gets even more and more control over Western nations. I mean, they have like a gulag prison system, the Laogai prison network in China. We see how they treat political opponents. We see how they treat people who are religious and so on. And they run the country with an iron grip. And that's Chinese people. I can't imagine what they would do to Europeans and so on if they ran the show. Actually, on the screen here, I thought you'd find this interesting. Gee, I just found this article. Let me just go full screen here. It's quite old. It's about 7 years old, I think. But it's pretty much some of the Chinese diaspora in Ireland, well, specifically people from Hong Kong, spoke to Irish reporters saying that they knew that within the Chinese diaspora in Ireland, there were members of the community reporting to the Chinese Communist Party, and they were told to spy on Irish people. This is the kind of stuff going on in the background that I don't think Irish people quite understand, that we're being studied, perhaps reconnaissance for something that's going to happen later. Are you kind of shocked by what these people said to the media?
This is absolutely commonplace in America as well. So just a few days ago, and someone I met on X wanted, she read my book and she wanted me to speak at her grandchild Catholic school, Catholic high school here in Virginia. And so she made a request to the school, and the school responded, no, we can't do that. We can't let someone like me to speak their school because they have Chinese students and they have to be sensitive. Sensitive about what? About the danger of communism? So this is,
Exactly.
and yeah, the people don't see it. The American people don't see it, and there are a lot of people from China. They are, and some unknowingly they get paid. Some unknowingly defend the CCP because CCP has been brainwashed people to believe that China is CCP and the CCP is China. If you disagree with the government, you are against China. You're hurting the feelings of the Chinese people. And this is really, this has been really, really brainwashed a lot of Americans. And
Yes.
I have been trying to do this, just make them aware that this is a tactic by the CCP. The CCP absolutely is not China. China is a civilization and CCP is a regime. And CCP
Yes.
is a regime with imported foreign ideology, communism, and it came from Europe. It's nothing to do with Chinese civilization.
Yes.
And here, the sign here is serve the people. They never serve the people. They rule the people. They absolutely the rulers of the Chinese people by enslave every one of us.
Yeah, 100%. And exactly, your foreign imported ideology. I kind of see communism as like a parasite that kind of latches onto countries, and it latched onto
Yes.
China, in the early part of the 20th century. Unfortunately, as for the viewers, you have to get this book. It's brilliant how she goes in the Made in America book, the recent book. She goes into great detail about the origins of the communist movement in China. My God, what an absolute car crash when the Americans start getting involved and supporting the wrong people and not suppressing the communists. And obviously this all culminated in the creation of the People's Republic of China in 1949. People have to look at their history here. Like you said, it doesn't even belong in the country in the first place. As well as that, looking at the States and what's been going on, as far as I'm aware, Canada is pretty much gone as far as I'm concerned. There's just too many people
Yeah.
brainwashed with Marxism, unfortunately. And this obviously has it's not as big or powerful as the States at all, but it is right there on the northern border. And as far as I know, China controls an awful lot within Canada, which shouldn't surprise us. When you have a country full of lefties, they're sympathetic to communism, in come the Chinese, they don't see them as a threat, and China starts to control everything. I mean, how concerned should Americans be about what's happening in Canada?
They should be very concerned, and they should take it as an example of what can become of us. And in the CCP, just yesterday, I saw a report like there was like a 500 some organization identified by this report that were controlled by the CCP. I said more than that. I would say absolutely more than that. And because in America, CCP has embedded in every part of our society. And
Yes.
there's just almost like there's even anti-CCP organizations, they infiltrate. They will not let go any organizations, and even those anti-CCP organization. The matter is how successful they are, but they infiltrate. They infiltrate everyone. They infiltrate our political party, churches, and government and cultural institution, educational institution, medical. There's just no place
Wow.
that you can't see the hidden hand of the CCP. That's how dangerous it is. And before, in my book, I did say that before 1949, there's a lot of so-called naive Americans and helped maybe unknowingly. I will give them a little bit benefit of doubt, unknowingly, to help the CCP to take over China. But
Yeah.
since then, it is many of them is pure greed, absolutely just great. They don't care what they do is going to hurt Americans, and they don't care. They just want to get they just want to get their share of the pie. What they say that is, China is a place to get rich. So I think this is a really very, very sad to see that after dealing with the CCP for the over past 3 or 4 decades, they absolutely successfully imported the worst corruption into the Western society. And look at our politicians and how many of them are owned by the CCP. Don't look just at the Democratic Party, and look at the Republican Party as well. Look at the Republican leaders, such as Mitch McConnell. And I featured him in the book.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, exactly. People have to open their minds here and see who is colluding with them. Like you said, it could be for money. It could be because they believe in communism, or they're just corrupt or whatever. As I've been arguing for a while, the only thing that's going to potentially stop this is 100% refusal to engage or support with any sort of Marxist ideology or communist regimes at all. I mean, you actually brilliantly point out in the book as well, just to kind of zoom out again for the bigger picture. You talk about, I'll just quote like just one sentence very quickly from the book, where you said, there is something I've been trying to warn the American people about. Communism is globalism, or perhaps better phrased for today's reader, globalism is communism. So could you expand on that for us, for the viewers?
Yeah, this is so important, and that's why I try to explain that in the book, and for people to understand. Globalism is like you want to take over the world. That's exactly what communism is about. When I was little, every one of us were taught our duty is to help to liberate every country in the world. Only then we enter into the phase of communism. So China, even today, they call themselves a socialist country. And
Yes.
because according to Karl Marx, you have until every country in the world becomes socialist, and then we enter into communism. So it
Yes.
is absolutely global, and it's taught to little kids like us in school. And so if you don't understand that, and then you miss the whole point. They are there not to do business with America and peacefully with Europe. They're going to take all us over.
Yes, 100%. This is it. It's global totalitarianism, global control. I've been trying to say this to people for a while, that if you have a country like China, which has this parasite, the CCP, at the head of the nation, who's very belligerent, we can see they're getting more and more aggressive. They're using the Belt and Road Initiative to gain more territory. I heard recently that they have bought or control pretty much all of the ports around the circumference of Africa. This is incredible stuff. They're sending their fishing fleets into Argentina's waters. They're starting trouble with all their neighbors. It couldn't be more obvious that they've got global ambitions, and we know as well about their connections with the United Nations, the World Health Organizations, COVID. There's no limit to what they'll kind of try, I don't think. And as you said, sorry.
Yeah, they absolutely take over all the international organizations. They came in, and because we allowed the CCP into a so-called, I call it a gentleman's club, that the rule, everyone has to follow the rule. Now you let in a gangster, and what do you expect? And after all these years, CCP broke every rule, and then infiltrated and controlled every of those international organizations. And what they do now, when Trump want to destroy that the water and build a new water, they want to defend the international law. Now the CCP, the lawbreaker, want to defend the international law. So you can see what really happened. They absolutely took over the old world, and then now they want to defend it.
Is incredible. Yeah, that's typical of when you're dealing with a snake. Sometimes they'll completely have no disregard for the rules, break them, abuse them, or whatever. And when it suits them, they'll go back to the rule book if it suits their agenda. It's just they're constantly moving the goalposts. In terms of, say, again, how dangerous they are to the states. I mean, I knew about when COVID happened straight away. I knew something was going on. It was connected with communism. You mentioned fentanyl as well. So we had the COVID situation, which it affected the whole West. Fentanyl in particular seems to be attacking the United States of America. And then recently as well, I heard about the Biolabs. Chinese nationals were running these biolabs near Las Vegas. And I'll just read a very quick, just one sentence here. I can't remember where I got this quote. I think it was from an article, but it said, on January 31st, 2026, the FBI raided 2 illegal biolabs in Las Vegas linked to CCP-connected companies. Over 1,000 samples labeled HIV, COVID and Ebola were seized and sent for analysis. This is incredible stuff. I mean, we're talking about biological attacks on the Americans. Do you think Americans would accept this, this level of aggression and these kind of evil intentions?
Of course not. And also, there's a report of them bringing in the kind of a virus that will kill the crops. And then or what happens when you have no food? It's a weapon. It's bioweapon. And I think more and more Americans and should know all this. And I don't think the news organization really made this a big deal. And I learned it from Fox. And not every major media outlet reported this. People need to understand it. It is, they want us dead. They do. They want to take us over, and they want us all dead. So that is absolutely a matter of life and death. And I think we have some time left. I do really want to talk about Ireland. I think Ireland is absolutely a very interesting case of cultural Marxism. And so I'm sure you'll have a whole lot more to say, but I think this is Ireland is a very peculiar case, and how cultural Marxism is taking over the country. And so one of the things nowadays we hear is decolonization, correct? Everywhere you go, and we hear this decolonization. And so what it means is, of course, the Western power have been colonized many parts of the world, include China. Actually, they colonized parts of China as well in the early 19th century. No, the 1900, 20th century. So it sounds like okay. So the Western countries are guilty of colonization. Of course, they don't mention that there are a lot of other civilizations colonized, and such as the Chinese. The Chinese have colonized a lot of places too, and you can see that not every part of China, or almost like half of the territory, are people that are not Han Chinese. But for Ireland, it is so interesting, because Ireland was being colonized. It was never a colonizer. It was being colonized, but it doesn't matter. They imported the race Marxism to Ireland, and then blame the Irish as white supremacists for just being white. And I think many Irish go with it. They're fine. And then they imported people from other parts of the world, and then they automatically become oppressed in Ireland. And this is something I just find that fascinating, that a lot of Irish, especially the leftists, they seems to be fine with this absolute absurd accusation that Irish people are racist, Irish people are guilty of the original sin of colonization. What do you think?
Oh yeah, well, Ireland is a real special case, and it's interestingly in my opinion, it's connected to the fact that Ireland was under the control of the British Crown. Before that was the English Crown, going back to about the 12th century. I think we had the Cambro Normans came in, which was the first type of English person to come in, and for arguably 800 years, Ireland was ruled by the British till, well, we'll say we use 1921, 22 as a marker with the Anglo-Irish Treaty. But my theory is that we've been told all of our lives in the 20th century, particularly by the Marxists in Ireland, that we were like victims of British imperial oppression in the past, or also that we were oppressed by the Catholic Church. And I think that kind of mentality led people in Ireland to buy into Marxism, in a strange kind of way. Like, as you said, it's like inverted. We have more in common with African countries in some ways, even though we're
Yes.
ethnically Irish. But people have bought into this. I think it's the education system and all the brainwashing. It's kind of latched on to Irish nationalism. It's kind of complex, but I think that's kind of where it comes from. I'm sure it's fascinating to you that how could this have kind of latched on in Ireland? It's fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely fascinating. Yes, and it's just, to me, it's so absurd. But again, I see a lot of the Irish leftists absolutely bought into it, and now Ireland is really, really. I think it's become the front line of the battle against cultural Marxism. And then recently, a high school teacher was arrested for not for refusing to call a transgender the preferred pronoun, and
Yes.
this is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, there's definitely pushback now happening in Ireland. People are starting to catch on. So the gentleman you referred to is Enoch Burke. He's a teacher from a very strong fundamentalist Christian family, and he was basically, got himself in trouble with the authorities. He refused to kind of play that game, as you said, and he kept going back to the school, and he got in trouble. I can't remember his status now because I think he's out of prison now. Finally, I don't know if he's gone back in there, but it goes on. But Irish people are starting to wake up. There's certainly a great fighting spirit in Ireland, and the nationalist movement, the patriotic movement has been kind of building, but I've been trying to get the message across. There's a lot of confusion in Ireland. We have a lot of infiltration, and the lefties are tied in with the system, and I've been trying my best to explain to people this is an ideological struggle. They can't just simply think
Absolutely.
about, they can't just think about politics and try to just vote their way out of it without trying to understand Marxism. Because, as you know as well, the lefties are very good at derailing and sabotaging nationalist movements, And I've been saying to Irish patriots for a while, you guys are going to get your asses kicked because the nationalist movement hasn't even gotten itself off the ground properly in Ireland. There isn't one patriotic representative in the Irish Parliament, the Irish Dáil, still, now at 2026. And because the system is so corrupt, it's controlled by lefties, the globalists, and there's a lot of work to be done. But would I be right in saying maybe the solution out of this is people elevate their understanding of Marxism and, try to diminish its influence, kind of?
I think so. I think that only when they understand, and also through history, understand, a concept is one thing, but understand the history, to learn about the history, that how the communists and Marxists would use identity to divide people. And in China, in my first book, I explained in very much detail of how they divide the Chinese people. And since we are all Chinese, so they divided by class, by whether you or your family own anything. If you do, then you are classified as the black class, the enemy of the state. And
Yes.
everyone has a label. Everyone has a label, and you live by your label. If you have a black label and versus red label, and you are second class citizens, and you were discriminated against, and you were persecuted, not just you and your children and your children's children. That's always what they do. They divide people, giving people a label. And the other thing, you talk about the nationalism. Also, I think the wokeism is against national sovereignty. That's
Yes.
why in the United States they call they have many categories of calling people basically a label that called make them my enemy. And one of these Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is somehow a label that they use to demonize the
Yes.
right wingers. But this is very interesting that nationalism is a weapon for the communists. In China, they use nationalists to really push the revolution. The goal is to kick out the imperialists from the West, the Americans, the British, and whatever. And now they are defending their national sovereignty. But at the same time, it is the national sovereignty. If you talk about national sovereignty in the West, you are a bigot. You absolutely are the enemy of of the people. So you can see that nationalism is something that the communists use when it's good for their cause, and then the communists um, denounce when it's not good for their cause. Because in the West, they really want people to forget about your country. They want you to forget about your sovereignty. They want you to feel like you're part of the globalism, and then you forget about your own identity, which is important. Being American is important, and being Irish is important. Do you see what I mean? They use it in a different way, all for the to benefit their cause.
Exactly. Yeah, they need to, and you said it there. They like to put people in boxes so they can go, oh, stroke the chin, and they start to criticize you, like the critical theory tactic. They break down nationalism and they put it in the box, and they demonize it any way they can to kind of brainwash people and encourage them to be part, to join the revolution and be part of the collective. And I mean, in Ireland as well, as you know as well, woke is kind of just part of this, and woke doesn't apply in the communist countries. So a lot of people in Ireland have fallen for the trick that when they hear, say, Putin saying, oh, we respect Christianity in Russia, we have traditional values, and look at the West is falling apart, it doesn't have any moral standards. They don't understand that in a communist regime, they don't allow any of that stuff in their countries because they want strength. They're happy for Western countries to be weak. So a kind of differential is created. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
Yeah, I do think, but I also want to emphasize that not all identity is bad. If you put people in a box, label them according to their race, their sex, their orientation, that is divisive. But we all have identity. That is our national identity. That's why
Yes.
we should all call ourselves Americans, or you should all call yourself Irish. That's our identity. That is uniting. That unite people. And the other identity is to divide people.
Yes, 100%. It is a lot. At least a lot of people have caught on to that much in Ireland. There's plenty of people have caught on that clearly. The solution to stop communism, globalism, is for people to be more nationalistic and patriotic. At least that's happening, and more people are getting on board because obviously globalism is the idea of creating member states of the world. We're in solidarity, a socialist federation of the world. The commies have been talking about this for about 150 years now. So clearly the solution is to take a strong nationalistic stance. I just, as an add-on to that, I just hope that people engage more with the Marxist thing to understand that it's like a parasite. Because in Ireland, like I said, there's a lot of ignorance of the tactics that the left uses. They're very good at destabilizing, sabotaging nationalist groups. I think that would make a difference in Ireland's case.
Yes, and also you can. This is very important for people to compare what the communists do in communist countries and what they do in the Western countries. In the communist country, in China, they try to wipe out all these nationalities inside China. They try to teach the Tibetan kids Chinese so that they could no longer communicate with their parents or grandparents after they went back to school, because the school mostly boarding school for the nomad people, and they try to erase the ethnicity. They try to erase their heritage, and they want everyone to be controlled by the CCP. And in the West, They want to tribalism. They want to encourage cultural multiculturalism. So we all forget about our own our greatest identity being American. We become Chinese, we become Somali, we become whatever, we become tribes, and that's how they divide us. So I think by comparison, we know that Marxism and communism, they use different strategy in different situations, but the goal is always the same. The goal is to control. The goal is to have more power.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And let's I always just try to encourage people. I mean, I often describe Marxism as being like, I often talk about, say, on a computer system, you have antivirus software, and every time you load up the software, you initiate the software, it updates itself with all the new types of viruses because new ones are coming out all the time. I think Marxism is like that with its tactics. It's got all the old tactics, it's coming out with new tactics all the time. And I don't think the patriotic movements are going to really be able to defeat this thing unless they inform themselves of the history of this thing and the different tactics that it uses. And do you think it's amazing as well that what woke is, or cultural Marxism, some people call it woke, the progressivism and so on, has done a really good job of eroding lots of things in the West, particularly patriotism and national borders and so on. And after decades of that, now we see the Communist alliance of Russia, China, North Korea, and their allies are becoming more aggressive. Russia's in Ukraine, China is chomping at the bit. The PRC is, the CCP is chomping at the bit to take Taiwan and start trouble with its neighbors. I mean, they're clearly becoming more and more aggressive. North Korean troops have been, participating in Ukraine, and they're all working together. It's amazing that people can't see this, that it seems like the communist movement is now kind of circling what they think they're circling the carcass of the West. Am I crazy, or am I onto something?
Yeah, that's what their strategy, and the Mao's strategy of countryside encircle the city. That's how he took over China. And now they're using the same thing. They're using the different countries and to encircle the West, basically, such as Iran, Venezuela, and a lot of the third world country, and they want to be the leader of those countries to encircle the West. But it's been and I'm just so glad that Trump understands our number one threat, no question about it, is the CCP. Everything he has done so far is to weaken the CCP without even confronting it directly. And I think with Iran and Venezuela gone, we'll see that CCP will be weakened dramatically, and have no more cheap access to cheap oil. And also, it's just a little axis of evil is now unraveling. So I'm very optimistic about what Trump is doing, and I think eventually we'll see that CCP turned out to be just a paper tiger.
Absolutely, yeah, great points. And just as we come towards the end here, we've got a few more minutes to go. Say, what do you think it would take for more Americans to wake up and take this a lot more seriously, or indeed people across the West? You talk in the book about the naivete of certain Americans dealing with the CCP. The Chinese call them, or the communists in China called them friends of the Chinese people, and even now that's still kind of a factor. Do you think that perhaps it will take something more dramatic or aggressive, or an aggressive action against the states to kind of wake more people up?
I don't know. I think this is a daunting task, and I'm glad you're doing it. I'm doing it. Try to educate as many people as possible. That's why I always try my best. Whoever asks me to go somewhere to talk, and I will do it, and we will wake up as many as people as possible. But it's very daunting because the mainstream media is not on our side, and a lot of people, just like the Catholic school I mentioned to you, and even today, She did not understand. The school principal did not understand that China is not CCP. To have someone who lived through a cultural revolution talk about the danger of communism is not offensive. It's not offensive to Chinese students. Even the Chinese students need to learn about it, because communism victimized everybody. So yeah, it's because the conservatives have been asleep for so long. By the time we woke up, our institutions are all gone. It's all under the control of the leftist, and that is the fact. The long march through institution has been so successful, and we'll just do as much as we can. I don't know. I don't see a quick fix, but something really encouraging. Yesterday, I got a request. Someone in Princeton is teaching the students a course on totalitarianism, and the professor wanted the student to interview people who lived under totalitarianism, such as me, to interview me to write a paper. I said, wow, Princeton talking about teaching students about totalitarianism. It's a good sign. It's kind of slow, but at least I see some encouraging signs everywhere.
Yeah, you're absolutely dead right. And when you said as well that there's no quick fix, I mean, the communists have managed to get their tentacles into everything, and that didn't happen overnight. So logically, we can't fix this in a few days, and we're dealing with indoctrinated people like Yuri Bezmenov, one of the great Soviet defectors, said once that some of these people are just contaminated. It's going to take a while to generate new generations of students with patriotic values and so on. And just as we come towards the end here, Xi, anything else you would like to add, say, for example, like a message of encouragement to Irish patriots or British patriots or Europeans? What steps can they take to help to stop this pretty much and save their countries?
Yes, I would say, especially this year is the 250th anniversary for the independence of America. And I encourage everyone, and I have been doing a lot of visit to historical site to celebrate this very special occasion. I think you have to love your country. You have to love your heritage in order to defend it, right? So you can't just say, we're going to defeat communism and Marxism. But the first thing is you have to learn to love your country, especially for the young people, to love your nation, to love, especially in America, to love this great country that so many millions of people want to come here, to be part of it. And Ireland too. Ireland is such a great country with great civilization. Learn to love it, and then you would have the courage to defend it. Europe is worth saving. Ireland is worth saving. United States is worth saving. We have to save all of them.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, G. It's been a real honor speaking to you. And for the viewers, I would highly recommend the book Made in America, the hidden history of how the US enabled communist China and created our greatest threat. But to emphasize, it's not just about communism affecting the states. This is a global issue. So for the viewers, I urge you to please, study into this. It doesn't have to be me or just G. There's lots of others out there, but I'd highly recommend this book and continue your studies after that, because this is a battle for civilization itself. And G, I really respect the work that you do. Stellar work. I'm really glad you took the leap a few years ago and decided to throw yourself into this. And you said that it was God's work. Thank God the American patriots, many of them understand you and they're going to carry you forward. So long may it continue. I'm sure we'll chat again sometime. But thank you very much, G, for your time today. It's been a real pleasure.
Same here. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Just close out the show. Just give me one moment. Thank you. Okay, folks, thank you very much for watching. That was Guy Van Fleet talking about communism across the world, how it impacts on the States. But our new book is Made in America, the hidden history of how the US enabled communist China and created our greatest threat. It's available on a bunch of different platforms, Amazon and so on. I got the Kindle version recently, so great book, almost finished it. Thank you very much, folks. Really appreciate your support. As usual, if you're watching back, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, because I think I am being restricted recently. I'm not sure what the cause is, but I think it's because of the EU directives on and so on are starting to clamp down on this kind of content. So I'd appreciate any of your support at all. So thank you very much, folks.